Next up, if we're going by my rundown, we may lose half the audience, so we won't stay on it for long, and we don't have to go pick by pick, but anything in particular pertaining to the NFL draft or the free agent pickups from Ohio State after the draft was over, Steve?
I thought the draft went about the way you thought it would go for Ohio State. I think the only deviation was Josh Proctor. I think the athletic projection had him going in the 6th round, and he was an undrafted free agent. But otherwise, the other 4 guys went within a few picks of where the athletic before the draft even had him going. So that was pretty impressive that even with those later round picks, that they had a pretty good handle on where Stover and Eichenberg fit in. I think for Stover, it's the best case scenario. He's reunited with his college quarterback, CJ Stroud, who knows that Cade Stover is a dependable outlet if things are breaking down or if nobody downfield is open. He knows he can dump it off to old reliable Cade Stover and get a few yards. So Cade's big job is going to be whether he can prove himself as a blocker at the college level, and I think that's what's going to really maybe differentiate him. I presume from whether he's going to be just a 2 or 3 year guy or maybe an 8 or 10 year guy, but nobody's a more serious football player than Cade Stover, so I think he'll do well. Same with Tommy Eichenberg. He's a pro's pro. He'll come in every day 9 to 5, put in his 8 hours, and go about his way. I think he's going to be a guy that is a lunch pail guy, going to go down on kickoffs and punts to start out with. And then, over time, work his way into a down or 2 in each defensive set, a first down guy or whatever to play the run. And then after that, go from there. So I think he's got an opportunity to be something. The Cleveland Browns taking Michael Hall in the 2nd round. They took Tommy Togiai 3 years ago out of Ohio State, similar situation. That was in the 4th round, I believe, and Togiai had left school a year early. Here, Michael Hall leaves a year early, and I was surprised that people thought of him as a 2nd-round pick because most of his production came in about 4 games at Ohio State. He had, I think, a sack and a couple tackles for loss against Notre Dame and a couple other big games, but consistently over time, he was not that big of a producer in terms of negative plays. People who watch his film might say, oh, yeah, he collapses the pocket. Oh, yeah, he helps against the run with just regular tackles, but was not a big sack guy, in his time overall at Ohio State, just a few to his credit. So Streetsboro, Ohio, he's from a Cleveland suburb, so he's going to want to do really well for his hometown team and family living up there. So we'll see how that turns out for him. And obviously, Marvin Harrison Jr. going to Arizona. Arizona's been in the playoffs once since 2015. I think it was in 2021 they may have gone to the playoffs. Kyler Murray, it's interesting. I looked it up. I think he's in his 7th or 8th season with Arizona. And somebody on Twitter posted, they still don't know what they have at quarterback. I'm like, well, if you don't know by year 7, then you may not have it. I don't know. But Paris Johnson, who they took last year in the 1st round, was at their draft party, and he was quoted by their team website saying, okay, we've got a quarterback who nobody can get to, because he's so slippery back there to keep plays alive. And now we have a wide receiver nobody can cover. It sounds like that would be a good combination, and I can't wait to block for those guys. And this is no doubt they got the best player available at the number 4 spot was Paris Johnson's read on the situation. And I think it means the world for Marvin Harrison Jr. to have an older brother like Paris Johnson who will put his arm around him and say, no, don't go there. They're going to, don't do this, don't do that, do this, do that. Yeah, they always make the rookies do this, but you come with me, type thing, because, all those pitfalls that can get you in a new city, a new organization, new level of football, all of that. Paris Johnson's going to walk him right straight on through to the next level. So that's a big thing.
Yeah, I do wonder, Steve, every interview session we would see Marvin Harrison working on the Monarch machine with Reese Stocksdale.
Is he going to take Reese Stocksdale with him? Yeah.
Stocksdale still has eligibility at Ohio State, so hopefully he'll be able to stay in Columbus rather than having to go
Arizona
and help out there.
Yeah.
But I am surprised, and maybe it's because of the medicals, that Mayan Williams landed nowhere. Not that he wasn't drafted, but he hasn't signed anywhere. I assume there's just a bunch of knee or foot leg issues.
Yeah, when we talked to him at the combine, he said that he had to have was it cartilage or ligaments replaced, something like that, some type of intricate surgery on his knee to have something replaced. And he thought he would be ready by the start of preseason camp in late July, early August. So I think teams, as they went through medical evaluations on him, saw this is a guy who's not going to be out there on the field at minicamp, probably not going to play for us this year. Once he gets healthy, hell yes, he's an NFL player, in my opinion, in some small regard, short yardage back, however blocking back, however pass protector. I think he could do all that, maybe even catch a few balls out of the backfield and rumble with it a little bit. But I was not surprised he wasn't selected. I'm a little surprised he hasn't signed with anybody. But again, those teams don't want to be on the hook for rehabbing somebody who probably won't help them, for a while. I know he was down at the Bengals, have a big workout for local guys, and he and Xavier Johnson were down there for that workout before the draft. I was surprised that the Bengals didn't sign Johnson, being a local guy. Where did Johnson end up as a signee?
I don't remember. The Bills, maybe? I don't know.
Who?
Maybe the Bills. I can't remember.
The Bills, that might be. But I think Xavier Johnson is a guy in terms of return game, coverage units, is going to make an NFL roster potentially if he does really well. This preseason camp, he's got the potential to be on a 53-man roster as an undrafted free agent, just because he's a jack of all trades, can do a little bit of everything.
Confirmed Xavier Johnson in camp with the Bills.
Look at me.
There it is. Now, connected to the NFL draft and recruiting, I came across this gem, which again, I only confirmed in reposting what this Preston guy posted is these people that make the argument, at least here all the time, that stars don't matter. It befuddles me that people just fly in the face of complete facts and logic. So 5 stars in the first round out of 32 picks, 11, 4 stars, 12, 3 stars, 8. Okay. That would lead some people to say, well, there were more 4 stars than 5 stars drafted in the first round. However, of course, we only have 32 5 stars for this particular year. He took 2020 as being the bulk of the players produced for the 24 NFL draft, the 2020 recruiting cycle. There were over 300 4 stars, over 1,800 3 stars. Therefore, if you were a 5-star in the 2020 recruiting class, you had a 34% chance of being a first-round pick. If you were a 4-star, less than 4% chance to be a first-round pick. And if you were a 3-star, you had a 0.4% chance of being a first-round pick. Tony, this seems like simple math to me. I understand everybody's going to bring up the aberration, but we're talking about en masse. The recruiting rankings are extremely accurate en masse, number one. Now, number two, we could have an argument about where those rankings are derived and how they arrive at those rankings. I understand that argument, but in terms of the final destination of these rankings, they're accurate.
Yeah, it's certainly more accurate than, the numbers speak for themselves. And I like the comment that some people have pointed out to me that this means 65% of 5-star players are misevaluation, so stars don't matter, as if being drafted in the second round would be considered a misevaluation. So it's the internet. It's people that are so steadfast on one side or the other, whatever, of everything, and are looking for a gotcha here, a gotcha there, because their lives are miserable. So, and then But yeah, like the stars don't matter. There are exceptions for all of that. And they are not the exceptions that prove the rule, because there are so many more things that the non-exceptions, the proof, if you will, that yeah, you're gonna, when we see these names drafted, it's like, yeah, those, we've known those names for a while, especially if you follow recruiting, because you've been seeing them for 4 years, 3 years, 4 or 5 years now. So it's not an exact science, because it's not a science. It's a bunch of opinions in terms of the evaluations. NFL draft, the GMs, the scouts, that is not an exact science. And those are professionals who it is, their job is to make it an exact science. And we've talked before about the failure rate of first round quarterbacks and the bust rates. So I don't think we should get too, or people should get too up in arms about recruiting rankings, when the NFL people who have 3 years of college to watch can't get it right. And recruiting rankings people have maybe 2 years of high school to get it right based on some film on Huddle. Like, so the NFL has way more proof, and they can't get it any better than anybody else.
Yeah. Think about the NFL. I mean, you have a franchise like Atlanta with all the needs that they must have. They just signed a quarterback to a $100 million contract, and they inexplicably take Michael Penix Jr. Doesn't make any sense to me. If anybody can figure that one out, I mean, you've got Cousins who you're paying all this money for the next 3 or 4 years. You're not expecting anybody other than Cousins to be your starting quarterback for the next 3 or 4 years. And by that time, it's time for Penix to sign another contract, and you won't know if he's any good or not. And I don't understand what the thought process was there, unless, if anybody knows what their thinking was on that, or have they explained it? That to me is kind of the maddening part of this whole thing. In terms of the recruiting rankings, I think these guys do the best job that they can, given the data that they have. And here is a case. First time, okay, the OHSAA has overturned its longtime ban on 7-on-7 camps. And Tavian St. Clair, the week before, earned his Elite 11 promotion. And then, instead of going to the Under Armour camp up in Canton, he went down to Florida to whatever it is, OT7, whatever, 7-on-7 camp or league or whatever that they have. And he turned people on their ear down there. The kid from Bell Fountain is coming out of his shell and committed to Ohio State for next year, and played very well down there in a setting that he would not have been allowed to play in previously, in an off-season, out-of-state 7-on-7 league. And now he came away with discussion that he could, 24/7 jumped him up to the top 50 from like 150 in the country to the top 50 in one of its most recent rankings. And now people are, with hushed tones, saying this could be the number one quarterback in the 2025 class. I think there's a couple really, really good players in front of him right now that he's going to have to continue to improve. There's a school of thought that playing at Bell Fountain against the likes of Wapakoneta and, whoever they play, Sydney, they played Licking Heights, which is in my part of the state. Last year, they came over, an hour and a half away and played a non-conference game here, but it's not, the top Division I league in the state. So far from it, actually, whether he would move to a prep school or something, but it sounds like he's going to be back at Bell Fountain for his senior year. But that's an example of a guy who's gotten in front of the talent evaluators where he would not have in the past. And now he's got a chance to vault way up the charts, and we'll see how that turns out. What does it really mean? Does that get you a first down in his first game at Ohio Stadium? No, it does not. So, all the recruiting stuff and everything, it still comes back to staying healthy, strength and conditioning, and development by Hartline and Chip Kelly and Larry Johnson. And, I always say Nick and Joey Bosa walked in the door as 5-star, 4-star, 5-star guys, JT Tuimoloau, Chase Young, et cetera. Most of those guys walked out as NFL top of the draft picks because Larry Johnson put his little imprint on them. So, and Mick Marotti and everything else. But yeah, to me, rankings just take them with a grain of salt. I don't get wrapped around the axle about it. People on our side, oh, they hate us. We're, SEC bias. They hate us. And I do see some of that, but I look at it and then I go on about my day. So yeah, I never let it bog me down, except on this show.